It was 1938. This footage, never before televised, was shot by an American family on holiday in Germany. Their home movie captured the glory days of Hitler's Third Reich. One nation, one people, united behind one leader, and poised to conquer the world.
No longer does a German need to be ashamed to be German. We once again have our honor.
But in the end, the Third Reich would bring every German eternal shame.
You mark my words. If we are defeated, we will be given no quarter. We will be starved to death or butchered. That will be the fate of every German, whether he is a Nazi or not.
These are their words, their films. This is the fall of the Third Reich. September 1938. For weeks, Germans like Elsa Klamroth and her family had been living under threat of war. At the time of her daughter Vibka's birth, Hitler had demanded that the Sudetenland, an area of Czechoslovakia, be returned to Germany. Instead of fighting, on the 29th of September, the European powers gave it to him. Now Vibka's father wouldn't be going to war after all.
Hitler has won a massive victory without a battle. Faith and admiration of our great Führer have strengthened and deepened, even when I thought that was no longer possible.
Nobody wants war. Everyone is doing so well. We're earning money. We have a car, a refrigerator, a record player. What is the point of war?
you remember Germany in the days before Adolf Hitler? Tens of thousands of factories had closed their gates. Millions of workers lost their jobs. Now the nations around us look with amazement when they see the unprecedented economic growth that has occurred in Germany over the past 5 years. The German miracle.
The miracle was being financed in part by land and raw materials stolen from other countries. But if you were German, what mattered was that there was regular work and even state-subsidized leisure.
It was our first real holiday. 6 meals a day, lots of courses at lunch, served by uniformed waiters. There was music, dancing, new films, and lectures. Before, only the rich could do that.
But not everyone experienced the German miracle. This cruise liner, the St. Louis, took workers and Nazi Party leaders on excursions to Italy, Norway, and the West Indies. But soon the St. Louis would take another group of Germans on a very different kind of voyage. On the 9th of November, the Nazis unleashed a 2-day orgy of violence on Jewish businesses, places of worship, and Jews themselves. This is one of the few films in existence of what came to be known as Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass. Here in the town of Buhl, firemen are seen ignoring the burning synagogue and working instead to save the Aryan homes and businesses next door. Meanwhile, the residents of Buhl stand and watch.
Today, the morning after, I watched my fellow passengers on the train. Only a few people looked up out of the window to see the burning synagogues.
Everyone's expression seems somehow to be asking forgiveness. But if everyone is ashamed, who smashed those windows?
If you were Jewish, It was now becoming clear that your neighbors would either ignore or applaud your destruction.
Our circle of Jewish friends is scattering to the winds. Next week, the Hirschbergs are leaving for England. The week after that, the Weissmans for America.
Everyone is making enormous efforts to get out. We personally are having no success. From the American consulate in Berlin, we received waiting list registration number 56,429.
In May 1939, the St. Louis sailed from Germany with nearly 1,000 Jewish refugees on board. Three weeks later, they were turned away by Cuba, the United States, and Canada. The St. Louis returned to Europe, where Britain accepted over 200 passengers. Within the year, most of the others would once again be under Nazi rule.
Bitte komm doch schnell, so schreib ich täglich, denn das Leben, Annabelle, ist nur mit dir erträglich.
The 20th of April, 1939, Berlin. It was Hitler's 50th birthday.
Jeden Tag 10, wo ich träumen kann, heute endlich kommst du.
And this would be the biggest birthday celebration in history. The scale of the spectacle was rivaled only by the passion of the Führer's followers.
I witnessed the festivities. I heard the clamor. Saw the enraptured faces of the women. Through it all, this moronic roar of Heil. Hysterical females. Adolescents in a trance. An entire people in the spiritual state of whirling dervishes. These people are insane.
Dear Führer, I wish you, for the completion of your 50th year of life, God's greatest blessing. I have never been among those who write letters, but now the constant thought, I should be the Führer's wife.
I want to give Uncle Hitler something on his birthday, but I don't have anything. Mummy had to write this since I'm only 4 years old.
The summer of 1939. Here in a small town near Chemnitz, the Wurstner family was filming their son Konrad and his little brother in their garden. The title card here reads, "Konrad wants to go to the party rally in Nuremberg." "300 miles away, this Hitler youth troop was filming their cycling trip to the Polish border. It's likely that they too were looking forward to the annual party rally. But within days of this trip, Hitler cancelled the rally. This year's theme would have been Rally of Peace. Instead, Germany would wage war directly across this border. During the summer of 1939, if you went to the cinema in Germany, you would have seen propaganda films like this.
Noch schlimmer tobte der polnische Terror gegen die wehrlosen Volksdeutschen wie das Versailler Diktat. Die unerträglichen Provokationen gingen allmählich so weit, dass sogar deutsches Reichsgebiet nicht mehr verschont blieb.
The Nazis claimed that the Poles were terrorizing ethnic Germans near the border. In truth, 21 of these attacks had been staged by the Nazis themselves to justify war.
We interrupt this broadcast. The few who have just arrived to address the Reichstag, which has been called an extraordinary session.
Heute Nacht zum ersten Mal auf unserem eigenen Territorium, auch mit der Reichstag.
Poland, for the first time this evening, has shot at regular soldiers upon our territory.
Und von jetzt ab wird Bombe mit Bombe verfolgt.
From now on, bomb will be met by bomb.
If you were German, you knew that this finally meant war with England and France. Another world war. But you may also have believed, like Hans Georg Klamroth, that you had no choice but to defend German blood and German honor.
Dear Elsa, if I survive these hours, I shall certainly think of them every day. It would be a pity if I were to die. And sad for you and the children. But what are we compared to the greatness of destiny?
The 4th of September, 1939. Day 4 of Germany's assault on Poland. But that morning, across Germany, people awoke to an enemy threat in their own backyards. Sometime in the night, British bombers had flown into German airspace and dropped 13 tons of propaganda leaflets on the people below.
Warning, from England to the German people. The truth has been withheld from you. You cannot win this war. We will not relent. Pass this leaflet on.
Meanwhile, in Poland, German bombers were leveling cities. Warsaw, September 1939. American filmmaker Julian Bryan was the last Western journalist left in the city during the Nazi siege. He would later smuggle this film out of the country.
One day, I had a chance to take pictures of 20 or more German soldiers. I asked them why they were inflicting such terrible tortures upon the Polish people. They answered as one. Wir müssen. We must.
The German onslaught lasted for 28 days before Warsaw finally surrendered. Hans-Georg Klamroth wrote to his wife from the city.
Shocking destruction of the city. If they had surrendered sooner, it wouldn't have happened. But the Poles are very proud. They hate us, and I can't blame them. At any rate, we're grateful that the war hasn't come to our country, and I hope it never will.
And now for England. I haven't the slightest idea of what will happen to me. This much I do know. Germany will prevail. Even if Europe has to be turned into ruins and ashes. We are the children of the gods. And they are most merciful.
June 1940. In only 6 weeks, Germany had conquered the Netherlands, Norway, Denmark, and Belgium.
Dear Maddie, it is wonderful what our soldiers are achieving. Today, we can be proud to be German sons and daughters. Love, Karl.
But as the Nazis spread throughout Europe, so did stories of their atrocities. Slave labor, deportations, massacres. It was reported that storks migrating from Holland to South Africa had messages taped to their legs reading, "Help us, the Nazis are killing us all." By mid-June, Germany had also conquered France.
Die erste Reise war angenehm, die zweite Reise war unbequem, die dritte Reise, die war gesund, die vierte Reise kamen sie alle auf den Hund.
Across Europe, German troops like these enjoyed the spoils of victory. Some, like Walter Lenger, filmed them. Others, like Karl Fuchs, wrote home about them.
Dear Mother, I've seen quite a bit of France so far. But again and again I say to myself, there's nowhere as beautiful and clean as our great German fatherland. Yours, Karl.
From the occupied countries, German troops sent home wine, cheese, paintings, and jewelry. From Poland, they also transported people to be used as slaves.
Germans, the Pole must never be your comrade. He is inferior to each German, on his farm or in his factory. Be just, but never forget that you are a member of the master race.
Wenn der Sonne mit der Bräune und die Bräune mit dem Sonne einen Kudel macht.
Is it possible that you can get used to war? We still have our comforts and warmth. We have enough to eat. And occasionally we even have hot water.
When I think how terrified we were of air raids before the war, you could almost call them harmless. War is not so bad if it goes on like this.
But it would not go on like this for long. The fall of the Third Reich would begin in the East.
By chance, my husband turns the radio on this morning. We are at war with Russia.
It was the 22nd of June, 1941, and 3 million German troops were invading the Soviet Union.
It's the 7th conflict in 1.5 years. Poland, Norway, Holland, Belgium, France, Africa, Yugoslavia, Greece. Well, our people are so patient and strong. We're now taking on Russia as well. No one doubts that we will win there too.
Wilhelm Bleitner filmed this footage of his unit, the 29th Infantry Division, on the march towards the Soviet city of Stalingrad. He and his comrades expected the Soviet Union to surrender in less than 5 months.
Dearly beloved Maddie, today was a day of pride for us all. Victoriously, we marched into Lithuania. Yesterday, I knocked off a Russian tank. If I get in another attack, I'll receive my first battle stripes. War is half as bad as it sounds. And one thing is plain as day. All of us believe in an early victory. Yours, Carl.
Dear Mrs. Fuchs, I have the sad duty to inform you that Carl was killed on the field of battle. I hope it will be a small consolation for you when I tell you that he gave his life so that our fatherland may live. Lieutenant Reinhardt, Company Commander.
Karl Fuchs died knowing only the glory of the Third Reich, not what would follow. It was summer 1941. And these German troops were among the 3 million spreading east across the Soviet Union. In letters home and on film, they documented triumph after triumph.
Our destiny is pushing us. There is nothing but victorious encirclements, advances, and extraordinary numbers of captives and booty from the Russian campaign. Our victory is never in doubt.
Some of the men who brought their cameras also documented another side to the conflict. The films you are about to see depict violence and mass murder. This home movie shows Germans stationed in the East enjoying their time on leave. But the rest of the film on this reel was shot in Zlozich, Ukraine. Here, those same Germans oversaw the extermination of 3,000 to 4,000 Jews. This is Libau, Latvia. An off-duty German naval officer stationed nearby filmed these Jews being led to a trench outside the town. The killings continued until the trench was full. And then another trench was dug.
Beloved wife, dear children, you needn't worry that we are living badly here. We have to eat and drink well because of the nature of our work. I do not want to write about it any further. It would only make your heart heavy, needlessly.
This footage was filmed by a German soldier home on leave from the Eastern Front. Men who had served there rarely talked to their families about what they had seen and done in the East. Willy Ries, a 21-year-old soldier, wrote this when he returned to Germany.
Marched into Russia, murdered the Jews, strangled the women, killed the children. Everyone knows what we bring.
It was the spring of 1942. And for some Germans, life during wartime was not very different from life before. But that was about to change. These home movies were filmed by Cologne resident Peter Fischer.
Since it was Saturday, we took a walk through the forest. Then we went shopping for a few things. Tomorrow we'll take our usual hike and I'll bring the blanket.
But tomorrow would turn out very differently for Peter Fischer and his family.
Above, in front, behind. Hell has broken loose.
There had been air raids before, but nothing like this. From his bedroom window, Peter Fischer filmed 1,000 British bombers laying siege to Cologne. It was the largest air raid of the war so far. The next day, Fischer had to conceal his camera as he filmed the devastation of his city. Documenting scenes like this was banned by the Nazi authorities.
Men, women, and children lie dead under these ruins. The first of them are now being recovered and laid out on the pavements.
And Cologne was only the beginning. By now, the United States had joined Britain in the war against Germany. Days later, the Allies followed the Cologne air raid with another run. This time, they dropped tens of thousands of warning leaflets over German towns. The leaflets read,
"We are bombing Germany, city by city, and ever more terribly, to make it impossible for you to go on with the war." Let the Nazis drag you down to disaster with them, if you will. That is for you to decide. We are coming by day and by night.
June 1942. If you were one of the 45,000 Germans made homeless by the Allied air raids on Cologne, you would have been processed here, in this refugee center outside the city. You'd be given food, medical treatment, and a shower. And you might also receive personal items left behind by Jews who had once been your neighbors. In the same week that the Nazis were looking after the people in this refugee camp, the world first learned about other German camps in Eastern Europe. There, hundreds of thousands of Jews were being systematically exterminated.
My mother saw the Jews transported from the station. Their baggage was loaded separately into a freight train. But when the train with the people left, the freight car with the baggage stayed there. It didn't go with them.
It was December 1942. Josef Eckstaller filmed his children, Franz and Liesel, decorating the Christmas tree. But this year, Christmas came with sacrifice. Food rations had been tightened. Butter, meat, sugar and coffee were replaced with imitation foods, some made with potato meal or wood pulp. And for German soldiers in the East, it was much, much worse.
All the horses have been eaten. In the 10th year of our glorious Reich, we are standing before one of the greatest catastrophes in history.
For 6 months, German troops had been fighting the Red Army for control of the Soviet city of Stalingrad. By December, the Soviets had surrounded the German troops. And severed their supply lines. At home, Germans were told that their soldiers would rather die than surrender.
At the moment, heroic battles are taking place near Stalingrad. Our 6th Army is surrounded there. Will they have time to shoot themselves at the last moment?
On Christmas Day alone, 1,280 German soldiers died at Stalingrad. 5 weeks later, Germans heard this broadcast.
Der Kampf um Stalingrad ist zu Ende. Ihrem Fahneneid getreu ist die 6. Armee der Übermacht des Feindes und der Ungunst der Verhältnisse erlegen.
In truth, 91,000 German soldiers had surrendered against Hitler's orders. 86,000 of these men would die, and the remainder would not return to Germany until 1955. After Stalingrad, the German people began to doubt the Nazi promise of total victory. But as yet, only a few suspected their true fate: total defeat. It was the spring of 1943. This propaganda film series was produced to celebrate the Third Reich at the height of its dominance over Europe. But for most Germans, life now looked nothing like this. The Berlin Zoo was only one of the city's bombing casualties. In 1943, the Allies increased the tonnage of bombs dropped on Germany by 25 times. The British bombed by night, and the Americans in broad daylight.
Sirens, anti-aircraft guns, long lists of the fallen, gas and murder, mud and ice, human beings burned alive, and charred corpses. And yet we're told of a golden future and final victory.
Most Germans now realized that no matter what the Nazis promised, they were going to lose the war. And so many began behaving as though they had nothing to lose.
It's impossible. There can't be that many ships in the world.
Here, on the outskirts of Berlin, these teenagers fled the war and the ruins of their city for a brief moment in the sun. "600 miles away, the largest invasion in history was underway. Like everyone else in Germany, these teenagers would soon be at the mercy of the approaching Allied forces. And they were about to find out that not all Germany's enemies would be merciful. In this newsreel, the Nazis claim that here, in the German village of Nemmersdorf, 62 women and young girls were raped and murdered by Red Army soldiers. If you were German, you now knew what to expect if the Red Army reached your doorstep first.
The hour of revenge has struck. Do not count days, do not count miles. Count only the number of Germans you have killed. Kill the German. This is the cry of your Russian earth. Kill the German.
August 1944. This is Hans-Georg Klamroth. These are his home movies. He was an officer, a husband, and a father. And for 10 years, Klamroth was also a loyal Nazi. But as the war dragged on, he became convinced that Hitler was leading Germany to its doom.
Hans-Georg Klamroth.
And so, in the summer of 1944, when he learned of a plot to assassinate the Führer, he told no one.
Haben Sie dem Führer den Eid geleistet? Jawohl. Ja. Als Parteinosse und als Soldat? Jawohl. Ist Ihnen klar, dass nichts weiter tun Verrat war? Nein!
Hans-Georg Klamroth was sentenced to death by hanging. He wrote to his wife, "Teach the children to pray. I know now what it means." Hours later, he slowly strangled to death. His trousers pulled down around his ankles for Hitler's cameras. His family took one small comfort: that he did not live to see what would become of Germany. By the early autumn of 1944, the Allies were closing in on Germany. In the east, there was chaos. Millions of terrified German civilians fled from their homes ahead of the advancing Red Army.
We took as many of our belongings as possible and found our way out of town amidst a headless mass of fleeing people. Behind us, the town was in flames.
Evacuation plans for German civilians were inadequate at best. Hitler expected his people to stand their ground and fight to the death for the fatherland. The country's last line of defense would be little boys and old men.
Die Stunde des Kampfes für jeden Einzelnen ist gekommen. In ganz Deutschland finden sich die Männer zwischen 16 und 60 Jahren auf den freiwilligen Meldestellen ein. Den deutschen Schwur zu erfüllen. Sterben kann ich, aber Knecht sein und Deutschland geknechtet sehen, das kann ich nicht.
The recruitment age would soon be lowered to 13. The 22nd of March, 1945. Allied ground troops were only weeks from Germany's capital. Hitler made his final appearance on film.
The radio announced that Hitler had come out of his safe bomb-proof bunker to talk with the boys who had volunteered to die for their Führer in defense of Berlin. What a cruel lie. These boys had no choice. Boys who are found hiding are hanged as traitors, as a warning to the others.
"300 miles west, American troops were taking Friedrich Kellner's hometown.
For the first time, we behold Americans. Their soldiers are outstandingly equipped and remarkably well fed. After a long oppression, finally the release. For our area then, the war is over.
But not all Germans were resigned to their defeat. Many simply couldn't imagine Germany after the Third Reich. Mass suicide occurred across the country on a scale never before seen in Western Europe. The last days of the Third Reich began on the 20th of April, 1945, Hitler's 56th birthday. More than 1 million Red Army soldiers were circling Berlin. Fewer than 100,000 German forces would defend the city.
Beyond question, Berlin is in danger. We're cut off from the world, at the mercy of the oncoming catastrophe. And we're afraid.
If you lived in Berlin in April 1945, you had no running water, no electricity, no food. And the last major battle of the war in Europe was being fought outside your front door.
And then, suddenly, the shooting and bombing stopped. What is left of Berlin is now completely under the control of the Red Army.
On the 2nd of May, Berlin surrendered and the Soviet occupation began.
That night, a horde of Red Army soldiers stormed into the apartment house next to ours. Then we heard women screaming for help.
The war is over. At this moment, the peace begins for us.
But first, all of Germany's citizens, perpetrators, victims, and bystanders alike, would be confronted with the crimes of the Third Reich. It was the 29th of April, 1945, 8 days before Germany's surrender. Shortly after 9:30 a.m., the 45th Infantry Division of the United States Army filmed their arrival at the town of Dachau. By now, these men had seen 511 days of combat. But what they were about to witness was beyond description.
The first thing we came to was a railroad track leading out of the camp, with a lot of open boxcars on it. As we crossed the track, the most horrible sight I have ever seen.
The day is over. This April 29th, 1945. I will celebrate it for the rest of my life as my second birthday. As the day that gifted me life anew.
There were up to 20,000 camps and subcamps like Dachau throughout the Third Reich. In towns like Ohrdruf, Flossenbürg and Weimar, German men, women and children had lived and worked, sometimes right next door. Now they were told they had to go inside.
They are liars, and guilty is sin. The people are to blame for their cowardice.
Across Germany, the Allies forced local Nazi party members to bury the dead. If you were German, you now understood that the world held you personally responsible for the crimes of the Third Reich.
They accuse all of us, without exception, of being fully responsible. But we hated the regime from the very beginning. Now, our longed-for deliverance means only that we are despised and hated. It serves us right. Nobody can escape this collective guilt.
At the time of surrender, more than 11 million Germans were prisoners of war. At least 1 million would die in captivity from hunger, exposure, and neglect. As the borders of Europe were redrawn, 12 to 14 million ethnic Germans were expelled from their homes. It was the largest movement of any single ethnic population in modern history. Devastation awaited them in Germany. Nowhere to live and little to eat. Millions died. And those who survived would live on near-starvation rations for 3 more years. Despite all this, if you were German, there was only one thing left to do: rebuild.
All I know is that we Germans are finished. I can't change that. I just have to swallow it. There will be hard work and short rations. But the sun is still in the sky. One thing's for sure. My life has certainly been full. All too full.